Hi everyone, welcome back to OncoDaily. My name is Ter-Azaryan and I'm the editorial lead of OncoDaily TV. Each year, the month of September is dedicated to blood cancer awareness, a time when the oncology community comes together to raise awareness on blood cancers and progress being made in their treatment. Today, we have a wonderful opportunity to highlight this important cause by speaking with an organization dedicated to advancing research and patient care in this field, International Myeloma Foundation. And I'm honored to be joined by the Chief Medical Officer of the International Myeloma Foundation, Dr. Joseph Mikhael, to discuss myeloma, current challenges, and the progress in blood cancer care.
Well, it's a pleasure to join you today, Emma. Thank you so much for giving us some time to share a little bit about the work that we do at the IMF. I serve as the Chief Medical Officer, as you mentioned, of the IMF, and indeed I remain in academic and clinical medicine, so I'm a professor within the City of Hope system. So it's just a pleasure to join you today.
For viewers who are new to this space, what is the International Myeloma Foundation? Why was it created, and what are its core goals today?
So to quickly summarize that, the IMF has now been in operation for 35 years, and it was first created by a patient, their partner, and their doctor. The three of them came together and met and discussed the fact that at the time, of course, 35 years ago, there really wasn't a lot of education that was directed towards the patient to prepare them for the conversations they would have with their provider. At the same time, there wasn't a lot of union together of the whole of the myeloma community. And their vision in creating the IMF was really to have an opportunity to bring all of the key parties together so that patients could ultimately benefit the greatest. At the time, the mission of the IMF was to improve the quality of life of patients as they sought prevention and a cure. Since then, we've adopted our vision in addition to that mission, where we want every myeloma patient, a world where every myeloma patient can live life to the fullest, unburdened by the disease. And to achieve that, it was really built on four pillars: a research pillar, an advocacy pillar, an education pillar, which of course is so important, and a support pillar. And in doing that, we now have over 150 support groups across the country and in the US, and another 150 across the world. On a research perspective, we've built a massive platform of research, brought together the top researchers in the world, in fact, created the International Myeloma Working Group. In advocacy, we advocate at the governmental and multiple governmental levels to improve the care of patients. And then, of course, of education, really, which was the start of it all. We have literally thousands of educational opportunities for the community at large, for myeloma patients, for their partners, for other healthcare professionals, for physicians, for nurses. We've really tried to be, I sometimes put it this way, Emma, we've really tried to be the convener of the myeloma world. When the Olympics are convened, why are so many records broken? Because everybody is given the opportunity to play at their very best. And we want to bring the whole community together, the patient community, the provider community, industry, government, all those involved, so that everybody can ultimately find a way to benefit the patient with myeloma.
How common is multiple myeloma? Who is most at risk? And what early signs or symptoms should prompt someone to ask their doctor about?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a fantastic question because, first of all, myeloma is actually not a very common cancer. It accounts for about 2% of all cancers. In the US, if we numbered all of the incidence of cancers, it would be number 14. Interestingly, the precursor to myeloma, which is when people have a small amount of the abnormal protein or immunoglobulin or antibody that really highlights myeloma, that's actually incredibly common. 5% of everyone over the age of 40 can have a pre-myeloma condition. Only a small fraction will develop actual myeloma. So in one way, myeloma is not very common, but its precursor is quite common. It is more common as we get older. So the average age of diagnosis is about 69, although it's younger in Latino Americans and African Americans, and that's actually seen internationally. We've demonstrated this both in Latin America and in Africa. Furthermore, people of African descent like myself are actually at twice the risk of developing multiple myeloma. For the vast majority of patients with myeloma, we really don't know the cause. There are a few associations with Agent Orange, firefighters, certain toxic exposures, but for the vast majority of people, we really do not know the cause of it. And lastly, one of the things that makes myeloma so challenging, as you asked, was the signs and symptoms of myeloma are typically quite general, meaning there's no one specific sign or symptom that people present with. In fact, on average, the average myeloma patient sees their primary care doctor 3 times with signs and symptoms consistent with myeloma before someone thinks about myeloma, because the 3 most common signs and symptoms are fatigue, which of course is very common, pain, specifically bone pain, usually in the long bones of the body, like in the back or in the legs or in the shoulders. And thirdly, if a test was done, that patients are anemic. So those are 3 very common signs and symptoms for primary care to see, yet are often the segue into developing multiple myeloma. Ultimately, the hallmark signs and symptoms of myeloma are the classic CRAB criteria, or elevated calcium, renal or kidney insufficiency, anemia, and bone disease.
So my next question would be, what's the most persistent myth about myeloma you wish we could retire? And what's the better way for patients and families to think about the disease in 2025?
So when I started in myeloma over 25 years ago, the myth was that there was really nothing we could do for myeloma. There was very few options. We had 1 or 2 drugs. Most patients had to live a very painful life because of the way the disease affects the bone. Most people were sort of hunched over. Many of them had braces on their chest. Many of them were in kidney failure, which, as we know, really impairs someone's quality of life. But that has dramatically changed. We've gone from having 1 or 2 drugs to now having over 20 drugs. We've gone from an average survival when I started in myeloma of less than 2 years, now with an average survival of over a decade, even in those patients diagnosed later in life. So we've really had a transformation in both the quantity and the quality of life. And so as we educate patients about the disease, them understanding the disease more empowers them more to ask the right questions. As we like to say, it's not that we want them to question their doctors, but we want them to know the right questions to ask their doctors so that they can look at the choices that we have in myeloma for their therapy and match the choice to their own preference for their own quality of life. And it's really been just so remarkable for me personally and professionally to have been a part of this process, to have the privilege of being involved in the development of many of these drugs, as we've seen them not only attack the myeloma more effectively, but tend to be easier on the patients, so that the historical chemotherapy that we think of when people get very, very sick is not the hallmark of what we do in myeloma for our myeloma patients anymore.
So as we know, the Iceland Cycling Expedition just wrapped up, and what moments from the ride best captured the spirit of the myeloma community, and what impact did it have beyond the miles?
The Iceland Cycling Expedition, or ICE as we call it for short, is really a beautiful picture of the journey of a myeloma patient. This event, which we've now had 2 years in a row in 2024 and 2025, has really been a wonderful opportunity for us to meet multiple goals, primarily to raise awareness of myeloma across the whole of the world, where we have about 20 individuals who are willing to cycle across the tough terrain of Iceland, individually fundraising and corporately fundraising so that we can fund more research as we raise that awareness. But it also does more than that. It demonstrates the resilience of these individuals cycling, but also not just these individuals cycling, but the team cycling together, because we had patients, we had care partners, we had doctors, we had representatives from industry, all cycling together, as it were, as a team. So it embodies what we seek to do at the IMF, which is really to bring everybody together, working together for the ultimate benefit of the patient. Iceland was particularly chosen for lots of reasons. One, it's very rugged terrain. I did the event last year, and I know how hard it is to cycle across that country. But it's also where we have conducted the largest screening study in history in myeloma in conjunction with our friends at the University of Iceland in Reykjavik, where they have a huge decode genetic facility where the vast majority of individuals in Iceland have had their genome sequenced. And so as we gain information about the genetics of myeloma, the true incidence of myeloma and its precursors, we feel it can have a tremendous impact ultimately on seeking a cure for multiple myeloma and improving the lives of patients with multiple myeloma. So it really is a marvelous event to raise awareness, to raise funding for research, to deepen our understanding of the disease, and to demonstrate to the world that we are fighting myeloma one step or one cycle at a time, and we're making tremendous progress, just like that team made progress cycling across the country.
Thank you. Actually, it was very inspiring to hear about it. So, as we know, Myelo, your new AI chatbot, is getting a lot of attention. And in plain terms, what can Myelo do for patients and caregivers today? And what will it do better, let's say, in like 6 months from now?
Wonderful. Well, thank you for raising our newest friend at the IMF called Myelo, Myelo. We're not sure if we think of Myelo as male or female, but however Myelo identifies, we're thankful that Myelo is this AI chatbot that pops up when you go to myeloma.org that allows you to ask literally any question related to multiple myeloma. And the idea and the concept here is that as we seek to provide information to patients, as we seek to educate patients, we want to do so in every way possible that matches everyone's learning style. Some people want to go to a live event. Someone go to a learning event. Someone wants to read a book in their hand. Someone wants to read a book online. Someone else wants to call the info line. And we have every day in working hours, we have an info line that people want to call. Sometimes people want to search a chatbot at 3 o'clock in the morning when Dr. Joe is not easily available. And so they want to use a chatbot. And so that's why we generated it. Furthermore, we generated it where it feeds exclusively on our material at myeloma.org. So that reduces the risk of any of those hallucinations or it finding unusual information on the internet, because we know that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so the goal was to make sure that that Myelo fed on the right information to give you the right answers. And I encourage anyone and everyone listening to this program to go to myeloma.org and test out the chatbot. Start asking it just about anything you can imagine about myeloma, and it will provide answers for you. And looking forward to the next 6 months, we are going to do much more with Myelo. We are now working on Myelo. Already, Myelo can speak multiple languages and will answer people in whatever language they choose. But now we have even more opportunity to help people find their resources local to them. So if you are in Armenia and you ask a question of Myelo, if you're in France and you ask a question of Myelo, if you're in Brazil and you ask a question of Myelo, it can direct you more towards things that are local. So we're working on that geofencing right now. And then lastly, looking even a bit further ahead, we are creating our next step in Myelo, which is Myelo MD. And this is a tool much like Myelo, but now designed to primarily help the medical community. So Myelo can help the medical community. We have a lot of doctors that search Myelo, but it's been primarily designed for patients and their partners and others in the community. But now we're going to have a more MD-directed, healthcare provider-directed chatbot to give them the information they need about treatment and selecting the right option for their patient.
I think it would be very exciting for the whole community to have Myelo. And moving forward, as we know, you lead the Empower project to improve outcomes for African Americans. What practical steps, like screenings, trusted community partners, or clinic changes are moving the needle right now?
Yeah, thank you for highlighting this, Emma. The Empower project is, of course, very personal to me, personally and professionally, as an African-American man, and having the privilege of leading the program. The concept here was that there are huge health disparities in myeloma, of which perhaps the greatest is within the African-American community, where typically now a black man or black woman with myeloma is diagnosed in the United States is expected to live half as long as the same-aged white man or white woman. And a lot of that has to do with general health, and a lot of it has to do with myeloma care. And so we created the Empower program in answer to that, to work within the African American and the Latino American communities and others to try and reduce that disparity. And we've built it on 3 platforms. Platform number 1 is to engage the community. As you've noted, trust is so important here. And so even just this last weekend, I did a large program in New York City where we go out with, in this case, it was with a church, reaching out to their church community, explaining to them the basics of myeloma, having them understand what it means, how it can be diagnosed, the impact it has in their community, where they can go to for help and resources. I think it's so important for us as the medical community to not just sit and wait for patients to come to us, but to go to them proactively with prevention strategies, with health strategies, to build that trust and to build that long-term relationship. That's the Engage platform. We also have the Educate platform, and this is where we primarily educate primary care physicians and healthcare teams that take care of myeloma patients, because that's where the diagnosis is made. I noted earlier that the delay in diagnosis is across almost everybody with myeloma. It's particularly delayed within the African American and Latino American populations. A lot to do with access to healthcare, the confounding variable of diabetes and other things that makes that diagnosis tricky. So we're there to help them recognize myeloma early, do the right test to diagnose it more quickly. And then the third and the last platform is to enhance the care of the patient. So through the multidisciplinary team that takes care of them, what are the best practices for nurses and doctors in caring for patients within the African American, Latino American population? What can we pragmatically do to enhance access to treatment? Because access to these therapies is often the greatest challenge in reducing that disparity. And so we've created multiple programs, including one of my favorites, where we take medical students from historical Black colleges and universities and pair them with a myeloma doctor to do a project in health disparities. And then we all gather together at the National Medical Association annual meeting to share that work together, so that those medical students, no matter what specialty they go into, they'll be sensitized to health disparities within their community. So the Empower Project has taught us so much about forward looking into the community. Churches, fraternities, sororities, barbershops will go anywhere in any way to try and raise awareness of myeloma so that patients can be diagnosed earlier and that their care can be better.
So I think our audience will also love to hear about Black Swan Research Initiative. And as we know, the Black Swan Research Initiative talks about cure. In real-world terms, what would a myeloma cure look like, and what concrete milestones would tell you we've actually reached it?
What a fantastic question. Well, for those who aren't familiar, the concept of the Black Swan Research Initiative was built at the IMF based on this principle of a Black Swan event, an event that we kind of think is impossible, but then after it happens, in retrospect, you say, oh, I guess that really could have happened, like the pandemic, right? Who of us really could think about what the pandemic was before, but then after it happened, we look back and say, okay, I can see now how it happened. And so we're trying to create, if you will, this Black Swan event of a cure of multiple myeloma. And we've made massive progress towards it. As we seek, the concept of it is to seek to leverage the expertise, and you can see even from the map behind me of all the different expertise around the world, the blood-based testing that they do in Australia, the flow studies they do in Spain, the incredible clinical trials that can be run in Asia and in Latin America and in Europe. We're trying to bring the best of the best together to say, how can we catch myeloma early? Even in Iceland, the project that I talked about earlier with the iStop project, or Iceland Screens, Treats, or Prevents Myeloma, to say, how do we cure myeloma? And not thinking about it in one way. Do we catch it early? Do we identify how we entirely eliminate it with MRD, or minimal residual disease negativity? How do we treat those patients that actually do not become MRD negative and care for them? All of these things are seeking to be answered. So to answer your question, now more than ever has the myeloma community come together to try and define cure, especially as we've now seen some of our CAR T patients go years with no ongoing therapy without any evidence of disease. It's made us ask the question, how do you define cure? And I like to say, I define cure the way someone would on the street if I went and asked them. And I said, if I walked through the streets of Armenia and said to someone, how do you define cure? Hopefully they're going to say to me, well, I guess you get a little bit of treatment and then the disease goes away. And that's ultimately what we want, a defined period of treatment, and then they don't have to think about the disease anymore. I don't think we're there yet, but when I go back to 25 years ago compared to now, we used to have a very small fraction of patients that lived a long time with minimal treatment. That fraction continues to grow. Now perhaps in that 30% range of patients that get a limited amount of treatment and go to a long-term remission. And our goal, as you mentioned, specific metrics, is to expand that number higher and higher.
Dr. Mikhael, so as we know, new therapies keep arriving, such as CAR-T or bispecifics and much more. How do we explain to a patient how you choose what's next after the first treatment?
That's a great question. I think two things I would answer your question, two ways I would answer your question. Number one, we need to educate patients about what these therapies are. One of the great joys of my life is to make complicated things straightforward. So we shouldn't just refer to drugs by names. We shouldn't just tell people this is a therapy. We should explain what immunotherapy is. And in fact, these are drugs because they work with our immune system. It's very exciting for a patient to know that their own immune system can be engaged in CAR T-cell therapy or bispecifics. Secondly, we need to empower patients to realize that they do actually have a choice in these different therapies, and that choice is not just based on how well a treatment might work, but also what's important to them. How far away do they live from the clinic? What are their goals in life? I have patients who want to travel or want to play with their grandchildren or want to do this or want to do that. Those things make a difference as we make those choices, which is really remarkable because we know there's no perfect sequence in myeloma. We all want to give the best to our patients, but it really depends on the individual. So with this big, long list of choice, it's nice to be able to match it with what the patient preferences are, what their goals are. And that process of shared decision-making to me is the magic of when we meet with our patients and make those decisions together.
Thank you for such a comprehensive answer. And many families ask, what can we do today? What 3 actions, medical or maybe lifestyle, most help a newly diagnosed myeloma patient right away?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I wish we had a perfect lifestyle fix to myeloma. We're working on different things, diet and the like. But I think going back to the basics here, that education is power. And that's going back to why we built the IMF. That when we have patients and their partners that are informed, healthcare providers that are best informed, the best access to the treatments that we have no matter where people are in the world, when all of those things can come together, there's no doubt that patients can do better. So I encourage people to learn, to go to myeloma.org, to talk to their doctor, to find a local support group. I mean, we have actually shown that when you have a support group, your outcomes are going to be better. When you have a therapeutic relationship with your healthcare team, that improves not only your quality, but your quantity of life. So there is something that patients could do and not just sit back and say, okay, this has happened to me. I guess I'll just do whatever everybody else tells me to do. Being in control as much as you can of your approach is going to help patients through their journey much, much better.
And finally, since it's Blood Cancer Awareness Month, for listeners who want to help, what's the single most useful thing they can do? Donate or volunteer, advocate, and where should they start?
So I always like to say my favorite answer to any question is all of the above. So whatever people are able to do, if they can donate, go to myeloma.org and learn about our programs. And if there's something that resonates with you to support it, we would be more than happy to do so as a not-for-profit organization. But there's multiple ways. We still have a few days left in Blood Cancer Awareness Month. And of course, it goes beyond September. When you're posting in social media, use the hashtag #KnowMyeloma, KNOW myeloma, because we want to raise that greater awareness. Find the videos that we produced on social media where myself and others have spoken or other images and repost those. Send those out because that kind of general awareness can have an impact. But also speak to us at the IMF. Reach out through the website, through the info line, online, and see there are ways where we want to work with you, where you can advocate in your own community. We can send you materials to share with others. There's lots of different ways that people can be involved. Attend some of our events. Sign up to see if you make the cut to cycle across Iceland, as we've shared before. I mean, there are so many ways to be involved. And if you have an idea of a project or something you want to do, we love when people drive their own ideas and projects, and we'll facilitate it with you to make it happen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mikhael. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. I'm pretty sure our interview will be very educational, both for patients, for physicians, everyone in the myeloma community and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a privilege to be with you.
Take care.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to OncoDaily on YouTube. Hit the bell icon to stay updated.